Dr. Mike, welcome to Dad Edge, my friend.
All right. Hey, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
And take two. For those of you guys who are watching on YouTube, we almost added in a blooper right there because we did our second take on the intro, and all of a sudden we were both frozen on screen. So good to have you on.
Yeah, great to be here.
Yeah, I love talking about marriage, man. And I want to get to everything you're about, but I think one of the coolest things that I've heard about you is happy wife, happy life is a lie.
Yes, it is a lie. It is. And it's one that tortured my life and my marriage so I've been married 15 years now, probably like 12 of those years. And I know kind of similar to your story. I know you had kind of a rough go for a long time and then kind of things clicked in, similar for me. But that was the worst lie that I was believing and what was causing a lot of pain.
Was the happy wife, happy life?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I'm anxious to hear about all that. We're going to get to your story too, but do you want to hear a funny story real quick?
Yeah.
So in line with happy wife, happy life. I mean, I've been doing this work now for, this is like year 9. This is crazy. I can't even believe it's been almost a decade. But I would say more serious since 2015. That's when the podcast started. So I guess 6 serious years and maybe a few years in there of tinkering. But the happy wife, happy life thing, you know, we've got a massive community of fathers in a Facebook group called Dad Edge. And I'd like to pose questions in there, like really get to the hearts and minds of men. And over the years, I've really gotten to the hearts and minds of men. I tried adding up the hours here recently of how many hours I've spent nose to nose, toes to toes with men, whether it be podcasting, whether it be coaching, whether it be in our mastermind, speaking events, all those things. And it's a couple thousand at this point. But I said something. I created a post on Instagram and in our Facebook group, and I basically said, if you believe in the notion happy wife, happy life, it's a lie. And in fact, I would argue that if you have a happy couple, you have a happy home. And here's how sensitive people are to that. It created a lot of fury in some comments. You know, people were pissed about that. Some women even were kind of like, yeah. But then again, there was a lot of good comments. But one of the funny comments was, don't you mean happy house, happy spouse, happy house? And I'm like, that's kind of what I just said. Yeah, but it doesn't rhyme. And I'm like, it's like, are we really being this picky? Come on. Like, it's so picky when you do something on social media and they're like, yeah, well, I'm going to pinpoint the most minor thing here and make sure everybody sees it.
I hear you. Yeah, I've got a Facebook group too. As I see stuff like that. But yeah, we can go into it. I mean, I'd love to kind of dissect that. The different lies that are kind of inside of that statement. But you tell me where do you want to go?
Yeah, well, I'm always so keen I want to start out a little bit with little Mikey, back in the day, little kid Mikey being raised by his dad and his mom. We'll just take a few minutes, share with us, what was your childhood like and what's the relationship like with your own parents and in particular your dad?
Yeah. So growing up, very caring, loving, supportive parents, very grateful for that. I'd say the power dynamic in our house was my mom was a little bit more wears the pants, you could say. Dad took a little more passive role kind of overall. But as far as my relationship with him goes, I knew he was there for me. I knew he cared. I knew he loved me. Looking at our relationship now, I had a really powerful weekend a couple weekends ago where I just went and sat by myself and I was at a hotel on the beach and just really thinking about my relationship with my parents and realizing that I feel like I've missed an opportunity to really connect with my dad in particular, and even friends and things like that. But my dad, I don't know him as deeply as I would like. I don't really, I know what he does for work and all that, but just really getting to know him at a deeper level. So I'm actually talking with him this Saturday, and I have this like map that I created of like how I want to know the people around me, like who are their parents, who are they friends with, who are they, what they do for work, what makes them come alive, that sort of thing. So I'm looking forward to doing that with them on Saturday.
Dude, that is so cool. I love that, man. A map to get to know people, what brings them alive, like brings them to life. That's a question I actually ask people when I meet them, is like, what's something that brings you the most joy? And people like light up, because they're not used to that. What do you do? Where are you from? Yeah,
that's a good question. I like that.
But yeah, I like that question of like, what brings you joy? What brings you to life? And what gets you most excited to go do? So your parents are still together, obviously,
Yep.
right? And by the way, you are a minority, meaning that I hardly ever get to interview someone where they're like, I grew up in a great environment. So
yeah, I am fortunate.
Yes, you are. Well, let's steal from your childhood. Let's steal from your parents, and let's steal some of the great things that they did and the environment they created. So specifically, what can the men learn from your mom and dad that they can take into their home? So immediately after listening to this podcast, be like, I'm going to go do that very thing that Dr. Mike said.
Yeah, I think so. We definitely had some kind of structured things that happened every day, and looking back, I think that was powerful. So we did have dinner together pretty much every night. We did have a family scripture study and a family prayer each night. We did every week what we call a family night, where you come together, you share like a spiritual thought, you sing a song, you say a prayer, you play a game, and you have a treat. And, that's what we do once a week, every week. My parents were definitely at important events in my life. I remember in particular my dad like taking off work early to come to my tennis matches in high school. Anything remotely big, like they were there. And so those are the ones that kind of come to mind as something very practical, tactical that you could do.
So my next question is, are your parents adopting, and can I apply?
Maybe.
I know I'm 45 years old, but I'm jealous, man. I know a lot of my like a lot of the guys in our masterminds, as well as previous podcast guests, would be like, "Yeah, I would sign me up for that one. I'll take two."
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think too, like we did go to church every Sunday as another kind of grounding sort of thing. Like I feel like that was powerful, just having like a very, a structure that I could kind of count on that was caring and meaneful, kind of family rituals, if you want to call them that. Yeah.
Very cool, man. I love that. So it sounds like there was, so for those of you guys in the audience, me too, a lot of structure. And it seemed like there was also elements of things that you guys did together as a family that were more traditional, celebratory, and involved everyone and probably connected everyone to a shared purpose and vision.
Yeah. My mom even, she was big into 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which I am too. But yeah, she made like a mission statement for our family, and we had like the Frazier Firebirds, like a jersey, like a hockey type jersey that she made for each of us. So yeah, it was, definitely we had lots of connecting elements.
That's so cool, man. That is so cool. And now, so let's fast forward to your family. Tell us about your 18 kids.
So we got 5. The oldest is 14, just started high school. Youngest is 3. And yeah, they are just great. Like I love them so much. It's been fun to get to know them as like being a parent has helped me realize the power of those traditions that we were just talking about, because that just felt very natural to kind of continue that into my home. So we do a lot of those same things. And that's just very kind of grounding and stabilizing. But another thing that there's another thing I carried over from my parents is we do like what's called a special time. So we take one of them with one of us each week and just do something with them that they want to do. We also adopted something recently we just call it minutes. So we do like 10 minutes with each kid a day. And again, just kind of whatever they want to do. We do kind of limit and say like some days can be screens, some days cannot be screens because a lot of times they'll want to choose like an iPad or, play a Nintendo game together or something. But that's been that's been probably the most meaningful thing for me to do with them is just to say, look, 10 minutes each, that's about an hour a day. But just so worth it. Like when I end my day, I think back on, I reflect every day, like how did I do as a husband? How did I do as a father? How did I do as a man in integrity with God? And the days that I do that, I can say like, yes, like I did a good job. Like I took the time, I connected with them. So that's been definitely one of the most meaningful things I've started doing, or we've started doing, my wife and I.
Just a couple quick reflections back. Number one, that is so cool. I joke with you about the 18 kids thing because, like, I don't know about you, but when people ask me how many kids do you have, and I say 4, I know exactly the one word that is coming after that. It's like, and I'm sarcastic about it now because I say it at the same time they do. Like, wow. It's always wow. Like I had one guy, I kid you not, I don't know if you've ever ran into this. One guy was like, why? Literally, why?
The main comment I always hear when they see me with the kids is, oh, you got your hands full.
You got your
that's the main one I hear.
Yeah. What's funny is that, I was talking about this with a friend of mine who lives up the street. My 2 younger ones. So my oldest is 14 as well. Then I have 13, 7, 4, almost 5. And my 2 youngers, we call them the bigs and the littles. The littles hang out with his little kids. And he's like, oh man, I couldn't imagine 4. We took all of our kids, all 6 of them, he and I, to this like trampoline park. And he and I were like, normally we'd play with the kids, but like we were kicking back in one of these massage chairs, just like shooting the breeze. And I was like, man, this is cool. We should do this more often. But the kids were like, just one at a time, constantly coming up. One of them every like few minutes, right? He looks at me, he's like, dude, I don't know how you do it. I'm like, do what? He's like, I have 2 and they drive, there's so much busyness. Like it's so much attention. He's like, I don't know how you do 4. And I was like, to be honest, man, I know it sounds crazy. But at the same time, I didn't think that 2 were any less busy than 4. And to be honest, I even told him, I was like, I actually thought that 3 kids was harder than 4. Like, because I feel like my youngest at the time would have been like feeling like an only child and completely left out. So it's great having like the bigs and the littles. But, the cool thing about what you just said is I know how hard it is to have that one-on-one time. It's really difficult, especially with that many kids. And it's great that you guys put in practices to have one-on-one time. My wife and I do that too. My wife literally just took my oldest out last night. I took my oldest out last week. I took the other 3 out for dinner last night. So it's really cool because you really get, and it doesn't matter if you have 2 or if you have 10, but keep being able to get to know each kid on a personal level, that one-on-one time. We try to do that too, where we try to spend at least 10 minutes with each kid. And that 10 minutes usually happens right before bed. So bedtime lasts a good hour. There's like no downtime when it comes to that.
Yes.
But it's really meaningful for them.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's actually move on to your expertise, and that is strong marriages. How did you even, I know you're a doctor, but how did you even get involved in this?
Yeah. So, I mean, from probably around age 16, I felt like I wanted to go into a counseling type of profession. Like that just seemed like a calling for me. I liked, people are like, oh, you just want to hear people's problems. I'm like, yeah, That sounds fun. Like, it sounded like something I wanted to do, was to, hear people's problems and try to help, right? Try to, guide them through it or support them through it. So eventually kind of decided on psychiatry. I did a couples counseling as part of my training in psychiatry. But like what really pointed me that direction was my own marriage and my own struggles in my marriage. My wife was actually sex trafficked by her family for many years, from a child up until actually after we were married, which I found out later on.
So, and just for clarity, was this her parents?
Yeah. So her parents were the ones doing it, which unfortunately is a lot more common than we would like to believe.
You're kidding.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm just like crazy naive, but that just, it doesn't even enter my mind, right? As I know it's a thing, obviously. I know sex trafficking is huge, and there's lots of organizations out there that are obviously trying to rid the world of it.
Yeah.
This one, though, where you're actually taking your own child, this one's new to me. I haven't heard this one.
Yeah, unfortunately, it does happen a lot. Like, as far as logistics go, like, it kind of makes more sense. Like, you kind of train this kid up into it. They don't really know any better. You have a lot of control. Yeah, like, what would inspire someone to want to do that is maybe the bigger question. And, something that I've had to come to grips with, more recently, is that bad part inside of all of us, that even I have and had to address myself. And some people just go a lot farther with that. They get excitement or pleasure off of seeing other people in pain. That's a real thing. And I think the more we can open our eyes to that in others and in ourselves, like, that actually gives us more power. Like, when we can recognize that that's there, that it exists. So instead of just saying, "Oh, like, that can't happen."
That's just unreal. Are you, when you say that parts of us inside of this, are you referring to more like shadow work?
Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah.
And real quick, just as a side note, I don't want to get too deep into it, but just so the audience understands, what exactly is shadow?
So I actually haven't read the book you're referring to. The one I went through is called Brain Talk by David Schnarch, but a similar concept of kind of looking at the motivations that we have that are actually not good. Like, the book kind of draws a distinction between empathy, like the ability to see the emotions in other people, and then compassion, which is like dealing with those in a good way. So what he calls is antisocial empathy, meaning like you see someone's pain and you try to cause it, or you see someone's pain and you just don't care. Or so we all have that to some extent. That was like the worst thing that happened to me like a couple weekends ago that I was talking about, is that I saw that. Like, I really saw it in myself and in my relationship with my wife and with my friends, and it was everywhere, and I just didn't see it. So I was able to really dig in and see that more, those patterns, which gave me oddly like more of a sense of wholeness and completeness. And it's hard work, but it's good, and I think important to move forward, and something that I'm applying with my clients a lot more now too.
And so it sounds like maybe there were some challenges early on in your own marriage, and what were those?
Yeah, so I mean, you figure someone who's been through something like that's going to have a hard time trusting. So she didn't really trust me. It was hard for her to talk to me about much. Sex was not good. Like, I just often felt like I just wasn't important to her, that I didn't really matter, that she would rather be with somebody else, or that I was just kind of a meal ticket. I was providing for her financially and kind of taking care of the kids, but that's all I was really good for as far as she was concerned. I felt like that for a long time. Like, sometimes I'd go to my car and just like scream because I felt like I couldn't handle it anymore. And I was pinning that all kind of on her. But what I came to realize was a lot of that's on me. And this idea of happy wife, happy life, like I was trying so hard to make her happy all the time, and she wasn't. And so I felt like I was failing. I felt like I was not doing a good job. The other kind of side of happy wife, happy life is that if you do enough to make her happy, it's her turn to make you happy. And so I felt like, okay, like I'm doing my part. Now it's your turn. Like it's your turn to make me happy now. And yeah, I just had to look at all of that, see that lie for what it was, and realize it was more about me building up my strength, becoming more attractive. And that's what actually worked to create a better and stronger marriage.
I want to go a little farther with this whole thing of making our wives happy, right? Yeah. And you said something else there. I just had Dr. Robert Glover on for the second time, and that's what you basically just named was his first covert contract. If I do nice things for my wife, she'll reciprocate. That's right. What I expect, right?
Right.
Men truly believe that they have the power to make their wives happy. Right. And while I think we can inspire and influence good energy, support, inspiration, at the end of the day, you're the doctor here. I'm not. So you tell me if I'm wrong. At the end of the day, I don't think it's possible that we can make someone else happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that right?
No, absolutely. That was the kind of a real breakthrough moment for me. I remember I was listening to a podcast. It's by someone named Jody Moore. And she just said this phrase, like, you are not responsible for your wife's emotions. And I was like, what? Like, I'm not responsible for emotions? It was crazy. I felt like I had been let out of jail is how I felt. Like, I don't have to do that anymore. Because I just believed that for so long. And you hear it a lot, like, oh, don't make them mad, or, don't hurt their feelings, right? We grow up hearing this so much that we think that what we do, it directly causes somebody else's emotions. And the truth is, where do emotions come from? What I teach and believe is that they actually come from thoughts, beliefs, experiences. And you get something happens, you have a thought about that, and then that creates a certain emotion. And so, yeah, like for example, coming back to my wife, right? Like I would do nice things for her, but because she had been kind of taught that nice things always had something attached, or she felt like so unworthy of it, it actually could make her feel worse that I would do something nice for her. Like, I was like, what is going on? But what I realized was it's that, right? It's her. So I'm doing something that I feel like is something good. Her interpretation is it's not. The other thing too, like my wife has struggled with depression. Probably some of the guys listening, their wife has struggled with that too. And if your mindset is, I've got to make my wife happy, boy, you're in real trouble then, because like now you cannot be successful. You won't be successful because like chemically and all of that, she cannot be happy. And so it's like trying to fill up a bucket that has a giant hole in the bottom. Like it's never going to happen. So, I think freeing yourself from that, like that's the first lie in happy wife, happy life, is that you can actually make your wife happy, but you can't. And so the problem with that was, I kind of took that the other way. That was like, okay, well then I won't do anything nice anymore. Like I don't have to, like I don't have to do anything for her. This is awesome. So I was kind of like a jerk for a while. And
I was going to say, you're going like another extreme. Oh, really? I don't have to do this? Well, forget all of it.
Exactly. And so, yeah, I did that for a while. And she's like, what happened to my husband? And I'm like, yeah, I'm not in charge of your emotions. So deal with it. Like, I'm going to do it. Like, I'm going to do whatever I want. But what I came to realize finally is like, okay, what you have to decide is, what kind of husband do I want to be, right? And what I call moving the win. So instead of the win being my wife's happy, the win is I behaved in a way that I think is good. I behaved in a way that I think is how I wanted to act as a husband. And now that's the win. A lot of really good things happen when you do that. The one is that you can feel good about who you are as a husband. The other paradoxical thing that happens is your wife kind of knows that there's not a string attached to what you're doing. And then all of a sudden she's a lot more likely to give you attention, appreciation, affection, sex, because there's not the string attached. That's the paradox. You got to let go of it and allow her choice. And you have to be an attractive choice. That's what you have control over. And that's it's a hard thing to come to grips with, but once you do, like, things are a lot better.
Yeah. And I want to draw a line in the sand here, and I'd love to get your feedback on it. But this is how I have evolved as a husband and man. I was definitely that guy in the beginning of our relationships. We were like, well, if I make her happy, I'll get sex.
Yeah.
I'm just putting it out there. Like, and that was my younger 30-year-old self. Right. And, what I found is if I do something for her that I expect something in return, and that return is not given back, or it's that whatever I'm expecting doesn't happen, now I'm resentful.
Yes.
And now I pull away. Yep. And now she's like, what's going on? Like, why are you acting like this? And I think a lot of women, I think, do that too. They're like, well, if I'm going to do all this stuff, then he should automatically know that I need this, and this done. And if he doesn't do it, I'm going to be mad. So, I think we set ourselves up for what I call expectation and agenda. A lot of I think just as human beings, we're wired that way. I have expectation, I have agenda. If I come and talk to you, I have an expectation, and most likely I have an agenda, right? Mm-hmm. And if those expectations and that agenda is not met, even if I don't tell you about them, like I just expect it, that's going to mean problems. But it means problems for both of us. The other thing, a different approach I've been doing now for a few years is curiosity and appreciation, but not from like this feminine sort of like, I want to brown nose my wife. I want to be curious and appreciative, so she'll do what I want. Cause that's the exact same thing. It's just wrapped up in different wrapping paper. Right? But it's different when you like, even how your approach and your overall like aura towards her is different. Like a woman can sniff from a mile away what your agenda really is. Yes. And if you're genuine, like, hey, I care about you, I'm doing this because I love you, and I don't expect anything in return. At the same time, you're like, if I kiss, if you reciprocate, of course I'm going to love that. But if you don't, that's fine, because that's not why I'm doing it. Right. And I think that's the main distinction right there. And a lot of men, I think, are under that impression of like, if I do X, hopefully she'll do Y. And if she doesn't, it's going to rub me the wrong way. And after that happens so many times, that's when that animosity builds. And then on the flip side too, with women, I think it's safe to say that a lot of women out there, I can't remember what the percentages is, but I think it's above 65%. The one or two primary love languages for women, one of those is acts of service. 65% of the time, one of those is acts of service. So women will kind of do the same thing, but it's not necessarily for sex. It's for like to get that acts of service reciprocated. So it's like, well, if I do the dishes and do dinner, then he'll probably mop the floor and do this other stuff and this honey-do list. And then when he doesn't, then she treats him terrible, right? Because she now has emotional resentment. It's just wrapped up a little bit different. Yeah. So,
and you're hitting on the main key, which is resentment is your clue. Like that's your clue that you're in this, what I call mosquito mode, right? Where you're doing stuff, but it's to suck off something. It's to suck off attention, appreciation, affection. And Like mosquitoes get shooed, they get swatted. Like that's what happens.
Ooh, I like that. That's a good analogy.
Yeah. So yeah, if that's your intention, like you said, she hears that buzzing, she can sense that something's up. And the other side of that though is like having enough confidence in yourself and self-esteem to actually make requests of your wife and set boundaries where, this is one side, right? Is I'm going to choose to serve my wife. The other side is I care enough about myself to make it clear what I would like from her. And then deciding, okay, if she doesn't comply with that, what am I going to do? That's what a boundary is knowing what you're going to do. And so, that's the balance is like, what I consider marriage is really the test of the second great commandment, which is love your neighbor as yourself. Love your wife equally to yourself, not more than yourself, not less than yourself, but the same. And it's a learning process, but it's a great place to learn it. And when you do kind of click into it, there's nothing better.
I agree. You said something there about making requests, or communicating like what it is you need, want, and desire. And that's a fascinating topic. I had a podcast guest on, Alana Pratt, not too long ago, who's an intimacy and connection specialist. She has been for years. And we got on this topic, and I think it was one of the biggest aha moments that I had, because I think I speak for most men that most of us are pretty fearful of truly asking for what we need, want, desire. And it could be anything. I think a lot of guys, even as I say that, they're probably thinking of requests or needs or wants or desires in the bedroom, but that doesn't necessarily mean that. It could be parenting. It could be how often you want to spend time together. It could be date nights. It could be like, hey, can I 3 times a week, can I go to jujitsu? Like, things like that we need, want, desire.
Yeah.
And a lot of us will push that down, not do it because we're fearful of what she's going to say, how she's going to act towards us. Is she going to hold it over our head? And then the other thing too is the approach. It's kind of like, by the way, I'm stealing this mosquito approach, right? Because I think you can ask for what you need, want, desire, and it's like a mosquito.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. So like, I had a request of my wife. And I've shared this story on the podcast before, but there was something I want to do with her in the bedroom. Don't let your mind get crazy, because it's actually very, very simple and it's pretty damn innocent. But at the same time, like, it was something I was super nervous to ask her because I knew it was out of her comfort zone. And so I talked to Alana, who came on the show, and the whole podcast was geared around how to do that. And she's like, a lot of it is in your approach. And if you come across tied to the result, you're going to come across needy and negative, and it's just going to feel, and I think her words were icky.
Yeah.
So anyway, she's like, what you have to do is you have to ask for what you need, want, desire, do it in a confident way, do it in a secure way, do it in an empowering way, not an overpowering way. It has to do with your voice tone and a lot of different things. So I'll give you an example. My wife, came into my office and I said, hey, I have a question for you. And this may sound ridiculous, but I've always wanted to ask you this, and I never have. And here it is. And wherever you land on it is totally fine. If it's a no, it's a no. If it's a yes, awesome. And she's like, sure, of course. When do you want to? And I'm like, are you serious? And she's like, and I was doing it more as a test. And I thought to myself, because it was the first time I did it that way. And I was like, man, if this works, it's like a kind of a cool bonus. But if it doesn't, at least I understand the lesson in it. Because she said the satisfaction really lies within the fact that you had the courage to ask, not what she said about it. So the fact that that's where you stake your flag, like I asked, right? And when I asked her in that way, she's like, yeah, that'd be great. When do you want to do it? And I was like, wow, really? It's that easy? She's like, yeah. How long have you been holding this back? And I told her like 15 years, and she just laughed, and she's like, oh my God, you could have asked me 15 years ago. I was like, okay. I was like, here's an experiment. What if I would have asked like this? So I was kind of wondering if, and it's okay if you say no, not a big deal. I was kind of wondering if we could maybe try this, and if it makes you feel weird, then we don't have to. And she's like, no, absolutely not. And I was like, why? What was the difference? And she said the difference was it was your approach. Like the approach, like literally did not make me feel right whatsoever. So I thought that was fascinating. You know, it's all about the approach. But what is your view of the approach? Like take that story and maybe define for the audience, like what do they need to take from that?
Yeah. So to me, it comes back to that idea of happy wife, happy life, right? Because what's stopping you from making that request is knowing that she might be unhappy about it, right? So when you come in and you understand, like, yeah, you know, maybe she won't be happy, but this is something important to me. Like, this is an integrity to me. This is something that I value, that's important. You know, that's what the approach is. Like, what I teach is, again, like your feelings come from your thoughts, right? And so what you want to be clear on is like kind of what you're thinking as you go in. And I think you really hit this well, which is, you know, whether she says yes or no, like I want to express this because it's true to me, right? And so if that's the thought going in, you know, your feeling is going to be secure, it's going to be confident, and the way that you ask it will be different because your intention is different. Like your intention is understanding, making yourself known is what I would say. Like what I define as intimacy is knowing and being known, right? So this is an intimate step. It's letting yourself be known when you know that she might not like it. Like that's, I think, the true test of strength and intimacy is, can I make myself known even when she might not be happy, even when she might not like it that much? And again, paradoxically, as you saw, that often creates more attraction and more depth to your relationship. One thing I like to say is you have to risk the relationship you have now to get the relationship you want. And that's what you did, right? You had to risk her not knowing that you wanted this, right? Which is where the relationship was, to take it to that next level.
Yeah, I love that, man. I mean, it's a good lesson learned. You know, as far as, you know, deeper connections with when we have this lens of happy wife, happy life. If she's happy, I'll be happy. How do we separate that? Like, so for instance, for a man who takes pride in having a happy family, and I would say a happy relationship with his wife, what's the first simplest step that he needs to take for that thing to click of like, okay, I'm not responsible for her emotions, but these are the things I do have control over. And these are the simplest and the things that I need to start doing. And by the way, just a disclaimer, we don't want to do what you did, which is the complete and total opposite. Like, oh, I don't have to make you happy, so I'm not going to do the opposite. Stops on that one.
Well, at the same time, I think that was an important thing for me to do because I had to sort of go that other way and see what it was like, because I had never gone that way before, and realize that, yeah, okay, that's not exactly who I want to be. So what I would, as far as like a very practical thing you could do, what I would say is imagine your own funeral, and imagine your wife gets up and she's going to talk about you. Like, what does she say about you? Right? What do you want her to say about you is the actual question. Like, what would you like her to say? Once you get sort of that in mind, that tells you what kind of husband you actually want to be. And now, like what I recommend is you actually write this down and you kind of visualize it. You start your day with that, and it's clear to you, like, that's who I want to be. That's the husband I want to be. And then you measure it off of that. Like, did I behave in a way that is consistent with the type of husband that I want to be? Like I just did a podcast about this, like, who decides if you're a good husband? If you're in happy wife, happy life, you will automatically say, it's my wife, she decides. But where you want to get to is, actually, I decide what a good husband is. And she definitely gives me awesome feedback on that, right? Like, she's going to be able to tell me if I'm on or off with that. I think the other element that I'm adding in now, right, is this idea of how are we trying to move our wife? Are we trying to move her into a position of below us, subservience, obedience, or are we trying to move her into a place of freedom and choice and, equality, right? And being more intentional about that. So that's what I'd say, really consider the type of husband you want to be, and then measure yourself against sort of that image instead of, oh, is my wife, did she smile today? Or did she, did we have sex today or whatever?
So not necessarily looking for those cues externally to us, right?
Right.
Because her actions and her emotions could change on a dime, just like ours, right?
Yeah, exactly.
If we're measuring against that, then, a lot of guys, when they join our mastermind, 80% of our applicants that apply for Dad Edge Alliance Mastermind, they identify, we have 5 different things that they identify, like, hey, what has your attention right now? What is it that you want to go to work on immediately? Is it creating an extraordinary marriage? Is it the connection with your kids? Is it managing your personal finances, optimizing your physical, mental, emotional health, or leadership? 8 out of 10 of our applications are marriage. And I find that fascinating. This is kudos. This is like super kudos to men out there, because men, they want to fix the problems under their own roof. Like, men have good, overall, doing this work, it has really given me a snapshot into men out there and their hearts and how much they truly want this relationship with their marriage and their wife. And they don't want to go outside of that, which I think is fascinating. And the words I hear all the time, I want more and I want better. I want more communication. I want better connection. I want better sex. I want more time together. Like, it's always more and better.
Yeah.
And it's very hard, when it comes to your physical health and even your finances, it's very easy to measure. Are you hitting your numbers and goals and objectives, those things or not? Men are like, how do I know if my marriage is getting better? Because it's subjective, because you could analyze your marriage on a Monday. It's the best thing ever. And then Tuesday, you're like, it's kind of crazy. The thing I've always told men is you have to control the controllables, and you have to measure the tactics, the behaviors, the things that you do that are going to help move that relationship forward. You can't measure the level of the happiness of your marriage by whether you're not, exactly what you said. Did we have sex today? Did my wife smile enough today? Like, all these super subjective things that can change on a dime. So how do we really know? Sorry, that's my 135 pound puppy who's barking at the snowplow outside. I'm going to mute my side as I ask this last question, but how do we know if we're doing a good job?
Yeah. So again, I'd say looking at that vision of the husband, the man, the father that you want to be, and seeing, did I behave in that way today or not? So if you look back at the way that you interacted with your wife, were you in that mosquito mode, or were you really trying to serve her from a place of not expecting something back? Today, when you did do the dishes, right? Was it because you just saw she was overwhelmed, you wanted to do something nice? Or was it, you wanted to free her mind up because she wanted, so that she could have sex with you that night? So, it's moving it internally, right? Measuring it by, was my behavior in line with the man that I want to be, or was a little bit off, and do I need to make some adjustments? I think that's the main takeaway for me.
Yeah, so it's like you said, it's measuring the things that you're doing, the actions and the tactics. Let me ask you this, though. I've always been curious about this. I don't know the answer. What if you're doing all those things, right? You're doing all these things. You're doing all these new tactics, these new behaviors. You're learning ways to connect with your wife. Maybe it's better communication. Maybe you're a more empathetic listener. Maybe you're a better listener. Maybe you reflect back, the emotions that you feel that she's feeling, and you're not giving her sympathy, you're giving her empathy. But it's just not reciprocated. Like the hang up that I hear with most men, it's like, all right, man, like, I've been learning a lot. And I'm really grasping these tactics and these new skills. And I would honestly say 8 out of 10 times, those make all the differences in the world.
Yeah.
And they do really well. But I would say for the 20% of times where he's like, man, like this is all falling on deaf ears. Like I'm no more further along than I was months ago with her. And she will not reciprocate. She will not try. In fact, I feel like I'm talking to a wall. Is there hope for a relationship at that point? And if so, what do you have to do? And I know that's a big question because it's situational, right? But at the same time, what has been your strategy, or what can men do? What can men do in that position?
Yeah. So I think it comes back to a couple things. One is double check that your intentions are to be that kind of person. Double check that there's not resentment, that you're not getting back what you're expecting, because it could still be that. Assuming that that is not the case, this is where you have to respect yourself enough and respect your wife, right? You have to say, well, I want, for example, a relationship where sex is part of the marriage. And if my wife's not willing to do that, that's not a marriage I'm willing to stay in, right? Now, that still lands on you where it belongs, right? That's still your decision instead of hers. But now the game has changed, right? Because if you come in and you're just saying, I'm going to do everything I can for you, and no matter what, I'm here, right? There's actually not a lot of pressure for improvement in the marriage. Versus you come in and you say, look, I'm doing these things, and I also want this back, and I want to work on it with you. But if you're really not willing to, I am willing to walk away from this marriage. Now your wife has a choice, right? She can choose to step up and start working on it, and you can take things to the next level, or you can choose to walk away. And this takes a lot of, this is work I've done with some guys, right, where they really have to get clear on what are the deal breakers in the marriage. Like, at what point would I actually walk away? And what I help guys a lot of times, like, well, nothing. I'm like, well, what if your wife just started having affairs every day? Like, would you still stay married to her? Most guys would say, well, no. You're like, okay, well, so there is at least some boundary there. A boundary being what I will do in response. So this is the other part, right? Is you start making requests of your wife, because probably they're not, is what's happening. They're not making requests. Or maybe they are and they're falling on deaf ears. If that's true, then they're not setting boundaries, meaning making it clear what they will do if their requests are not met, or if things don't change or whatever. Because then they feel stuck, right? They're like, no, my wife has to change. My wife has to change. But she doesn't. She doesn't have to, right? You get to choose if you're going to stay in that or not. And at that point, a lot of times that is when marriages do get better, right? Is the wife realizes, like, whoa, I guess I can't keep doing this same thing. I guess I can't, it's basically realizing your part in that dynamic, which is like you being in that lower position is really what it is. It's you putting yourself in a lower position than your wife. She's up here, I'm down here. I just have to please her and make her happy. I'm going to learn everything I can, but she's up here. I just want her. I just have to have her. It's not attractive. It doesn't create intimacy. So if you can bring yourself up here and say, look, you can choose what you want, but this is what, for me to stay in a marriage, this is what needs to be here. And if it's not, I'm going to leave. A lot of guys will take that the wrong way and say, oh, well, yeah, okay, great. Like, here's the list of things, but you have to be very clear on, you have to put a lot of thought into that. And you have to look very closely at your side and how you're creating that. Because if you don't, you're going to go into the new relationship, do the exact same thing again, right, and create the exact same problems.
Yeah, I like that. Just really identifying, what the deal breakers are, because I think most of us maybe aren't even aware of what that is unless we're posed that question. Like, hey, what are your non-negotiables here? Right. And that goes back to asking for what you need, want, desire, right? And it's right in line with being very upfront with what your needs are, and then also not being tied to the agenda of what she decides. I mean, obviously there's an emotional tie to it, but at the same time, you're not tied to that sort of needy, nagging type of energy. It's like, listen, I love you, I care about you, and I'm obviously willing to put in work because I want a deeper connection with you. I care about you, and I also have things that I can't continue with, and here are those things. So I really like that. The last and final thing I really want to get to here, and I'm so curious about that, is how we can turn any conflict into a connection.
Yeah. So, a great way to look at conflicts is an opportunity actually for more connection. How is that possible? So let's say you and your wife have a difference in spiritual beliefs, right? That can seem really difficult, but what it's an opportunity for you to do, you talk about, tactile empathy, and that it's an opportunity to get in there, understand your wife's perspective at a really deep level, and then for you to ask for her to understand yours, and then to get to a place that's better than what either of you could have thought of on your own. This is again from Stephen Covey, right? Seek first to understand, then to be understood. So this conflict, it's a signal like, hey, there's something here. We can get in there, understand each other, create something even better, work through it, and now we're even more connected because of that conflict. Like the biggest conflicts my wife and I have had in our marriage have been sex and intimacy and some religious stuff. And those are big things. But as we've gotten through those, like that's what's created much more connection, because you get that deeper understanding. You collaborate to find something that's a win for both of you. This is where people get mixed up too. They're like, I need to compromise, meaning like we both have to lose. But the idea is you go until you both feel like you have won. And sometimes it does take like an outside person to help you work through that. But if you can do it on your own, you definitely have the ability, to find a solution that really does work for both of you.
I love that line that you share, which is, turning a conflict as an opportunity. My dog, I'll tell you what, you would think he never gets out of this house. A conflict is an opportunity. I really like that. I want to know, final question though, is how do you think logically of like, how can I turn this conflict into an opportunity when you have two emotionally charged people, right?
Yeah.
That probably aren't even like listening to each other, right? They're just like, just going at it, right? So how do we do that?
Yeah. So this is what I call emotional strength, right? You have two emotionally charged people, but you don't have to be one of them. So in other words, there cannot be two emotionally charged people because you don't have to be, right? Like you can come in and, some basic things, like if you know how to name your emotion, I'm feeling angry right now. If you can feel it in your body, okay, I feel it in my chest, it's coming up to my neck. Then you can deal with it appropriately. Take some rest, walk away, come back. Like literally what happens when you are in that kind of flooded state is your thinking brain shuts down and your emotional brain takes over. So that's why people will say, I don't even remember what I said. And it's actually true. Like their thinking brain did shut down. They're saying crazy stuff and nothing good is coming of this. So it does require you to grow up emotionally, to have more emotional strength, and to come in like guns blazing. It makes you come in and say, all right, let's sit down, honey. I really want to understand where you're at. And then you feel like she's attacking you or whatever. You can take a break, or you can use some of those strategies. Say, hey, I'm feeling a little bit upset right now. Let me take a break, come back, and I can kind of do a better job hearing you. It takes some strength. It takes some skill. And that's why a lot of people don't do it. Is they haven't built up that strength and skill and ability.
I can see that. I can totally see that. Because you're right. I mean, that is the fine line. You're no longer thinking logically, you're thinking emotionally. And that's when all these crazy things probably come out of our mouth. And that's where we say the most popular line is like, I didn't really mean that. I don't know why I said that. Right. Yeah. Because it has to do with those emotions. I like that. Well, Dr. Mike, this has been I've really, really enjoyed this. This has been a really fun podcast. I want to make sure that all the men can find all your great work and what you're doing. And I know you got a new book coming out that's going to come out sometime within probably the next maybe year and a half, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
But share with the men like where they can find everything that you're doing.
For sure. So I have a podcast also, Strong Men, Strong Marriages. My website, strongmenstrongmarriages.com, is where you can kind of see the work I do with guys. I do some one-on-one work. And then I do have a program called the Strong Man System that helps work you through these different elements of strength: spiritual, mental, emotional, sexual strength. How do you build these skills and abilities? So yeah, it's something I'm really proud of. I love the work I'm doing with the guys in there. And yeah.
And then your social media as well. Can you share that with us so men can follow you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram at Mike Frazier MD. I also have a Facebook group, a free Facebook group, Strong Men, Strong Marriages, and then a Facebook page, Mike Frazier MD, and that's about. I'm on YouTube as well, but Mike Frazier MD is the channel.
Awesome. Got that. So gentlemen, not to worry, I'll have all the links in the show notes. And by the way, gentlemen, if you want to watch this particular interview instead of just listening to it on iTunes or wherever else, you can head over to our YouTube channel. I'll have a link in the show notes for you as well. Go to gooddadproject.com/309 for this show. Again, gooddadproject.com/309. Dr. Mike, this was amazing. I truly enjoyed this show, especially the happy wife, happy life is a lie. I love that segment, as well as how we can ask for what we need, want, and desire. And then, lastly is how we can turn conflict into connection. Conflict could be an opportunity. So I appreciate you coming on.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Gentlemen, as always, go out and live legendary. Take care.